Good day guys, Austin here, and today we're going to be looking at emulators. In fact, to be more specific, we're going to be looking at my top 10 emulators of all time. Now, when I'm talking about emulators, first off, things we need to take into consideration here. Number one, this is all Windows based systems, so I'm using full fat emulators based on the Windows operating system. So in other words, I can emulate anything on my PC. Other things to take into consideration, this is my top 10 guys, come on, bear with me. If I play certain systems more than others, then obviously my top 10 will be more biased towards other systems rather than others. But if you think I'm going wrong here, if you think I'm choosing the wrong emulator for this system, let me know. But an emulator emulates a system, and if I don't play that system often enough, then sorry guys, but it's not in my top 10. But let me know what you think anyway. So without further ado, without waffling on anymore, let's actually get stuck in and see my top 10. Okay then, let's get the ball rolling. Number 10 then. NullDC for the Sega Dreamcast or the Sega Naomi. Okay, this was released back in 2007 and it was brought out by Razel. It's an awesome emulator. It really is an awesome emulator, and this would have scored much higher on my board had it been still in development. The issue that we got with this emulator is it is outstanding at everything it does 90% of the time, because it really does play Dreamcast games excellently. You know, it is outstanding at the way it emulates its games. The problem is that you will be able to play perfectly 90% of the Dreamcast games, and then those 10%, and some of them being actual classics, you cannot emulate, because first off, it won't emulate Microsoft CE games. So anybody who's actually played the Dreamcast will know those, because they have a little splash screen when they load up, and also because some of the games do have graphical glitches in terms of they won't actually play. Now this was outstanding for its time. You know, back in 2007 it was released, went through a few beta stages. 2008 it started picking up the ball, and that's when the actual Naomi side of it all started coming in, so you could play the arcade releases. The issues it had then was the controls for the arcade stuff. It couldn't be transferred into, I don't know, playing it on keyboard, couldn't be transferred into play it on joypad, so it was basically just the Dreamcast side of it all. It kind of veered off. 2008 also saw the introduction of it being open source, so everybody could actually get involved with it. The problem was that not that many people actually jumped on, except to try and port it to different systems. So that's when you started seeing it show up on the, I don't know, the PlayStation 3, the Wii, the Pandora, and the Android version of it all. And development was going on with that. The problem was that they started to develop for these various other systems to try and translate it over, but they didn't actually develop the emulator itself to get more compatibility, to get more frames per second and all that kind of good stuff. Now the good thing about it, especially compared to the other emulators that emulate the same systems as these, it is not that intensive in terms of resources, so you can play this on a lower end. And the games that it does play, especially my favourite game of all time ish, except a few others, it's the Shenmue. This brought Shenmue back into my life. You know, I used to have Shenmue back on my Dreamcast, and that's why I love this emulator so much. The problem was that, to be honest, in 2011 I think it was, Razel, he decided, well, for personal reasons, he brought down his website. He basically disappeared into the sunset, and for personal reasons nobody's seen him since. I just hope that soon somebody will pick up the ball and continue with this. I know, like I said, it is being developed with further systems. It's now going by the name of Raycast. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but it's not the same. It really is not the same emulator. So please, if you're out there, please come back. I love this emulator, and that's why you have made it into my top 10. Okay, so on to number 9. which is the Sega Model 2. Now, not only does it emulate the Sega Model 2, but it's also called the Sega Model 2, as in the emulator. So this is a bit of a random one, and I'm sure not one that you was expecting. The Sega Model 2 was actually a arcade system, and it emulated loads of games in the 90s. In terms of the arcade games, So it emulated Sega, I don't know, Daytona USA, Virtua Cop, Sega Rally, Championship, Dead or Alive, Virtua Striker, all the good ones, all the classics from back in the 90s, and it was awesome gameplay. Now the top thing about this emulator is, and the one thing that draws me in, is that there's like 50 odd games for that system, and every one of those cabinets that you played in the arcade, they all had different things, whether they be light guns or, I don't know, some of them had actually cars that you get into with steering wheels, others had the jet ski thing going on. Every one of them had a different control system. Now the guys that made the emulator for this, not only did they do almost pinch perfect conversion from arcade to emulation onto a, I don't know, Windows PC, but they also managed to convert the controls. Now the controls have been tweaked and they've been modified throughout the times, and we've now, after many years of doing it, you can play almost, I don't know, no hindrance whatsoever with a 360 pad or any other pad that you can draw up from. Also, they've made it so you can play split screen on the screen. So whereas back in the day where you played Daytona and you had a big line of cars, I think you could have like up to 8 players or something. Well, you can also do that in the emulator with split screen action. Absolutely amazing. So that is why Sega Model 2 has made it to number 9. Well done, Sega Model 2. Hats off. Number 8, the Amiga WinUAE emulator. Basically, this is a mouthful, but so is actually setting this emulator up. It is a mission, and it is not for the light-hearted. Don't get me wrong, as always, I did a tutorial. Links are down below, just like all the other emulators on this. I show you how to set it up, and I even provide with you the emulator. However, the reason why this has made number 8 is it's an absolutely amazing, spot on. It's probably one of the most favourite systems of me actually playing, and this emulator lets me play any Amiga. I mean, from the Amiga 500 all the way up to the modern Amigas. It plays the actual CD Amigas, the CD TV Amigas. Anything that Amiga brought out, this could play, and it's been going for ages. I mean, back in 1995 this first came out. It was the Amiga UAE, which basically stood for Usable Amiga Emulator. And then obviously throughout the years they developed it, and it ended up on Windows, which obviously gave it the abbreviation of WinUAE. So it's in constant development all the time, and still to this day they are adding to it. Now the emulator itself, it requires kickstarts from Amiga Forever, a great bunch of guys over there who actually make the operating system and translate it into something that other computers can work with, i.e. Windows. And throughout the years it's been developed, but trust me guys, do not take this on without any instructions or any help, because it is a tough beast to tame, to say the least. But it's one of those where you put in the time and effort at the beginning and you have got years and years, because there's thousands of games that this emulator can play. I mean, literally thousands, and thousands of them are also absolute classics too. So that is why this emulator has made number 8. Thank you very much, Amiga. Thank you very much, especially you guys, UAE, you little rascals. Okay then guys, time for number 7. For number 7 then, I have decided on Fightcade. Fightcade is a bit of a cheat, because to be honest, Fightcade isn't exactly an emulator. What Fightcade does is use Final Burn Alpha, which is an emulator, but it uses it in the front end. They kind of work together. I've done a video, links down below for this one, to be honest. But basically what Fightcade does is it takes Final Burn Alpha, a normal emulator for your retro classics on the arcade, such as, I don't know, your Street Fighters, your Neo Geo stuff, all that kind of stuff. It enables you to play them online against anybody in the world, as in from anybody that sat down next to you on the couch or the sofa, all the way to somebody, a stranger on the other side of the world. Friends, foes, anybody. You can take anybody on. Now the emulation itself, as sweet as it not, Now, like I said, it uses Final Burn Alpha, which has been outstanding in emulation. The only thing that stops me using it as a full-time emulator within its own right is the fact that MAME is just it's top-notch, to be honest, and you can't really beat it for the arcade kind of stuff unless you're after something in the niche. What Fightcade does is it takes it to the next level. It enables you to take it online without any messing around. Now, I've done a few tutorials on this, so, you know, have a go yourself and see what you think at the end of the day. It's a little known one, but trust me, for one-on-one, online, internet, arcade battles, you cannot beat this, especially for your fighting, beat-em-ups and shmups. And that is number 7, and a good one it is too. Okay then, time for number 6, and this is PPSSPP, which emulates the PlayStation 2. Now, I'm up and down about this one, to be honest. It's both an amazing emulator and it just racks my brain all the time. The issues I've got is, basically, it plays all the games that I want to play. You know, all the classics that I liked on the PlayStation 2, I can boot up and I can play no end. The problem is that emulation seems to have stopped with these guys. I mean, don't get me wrong, this has been emulated since, what, 2002? I mean, the hell of a lot of work has gone into it. And to be honest, with the catalogue that PlayStation 2 has got, you would be hard done by to, you know, emulate every single game. You see, this emulator works on a plugin system, so although PPSSPP is the backbone of it all, the bit that binds it all together, it relies upon, you know, numerous different features to all accumulate together to actually get a game to run. And yes, it is good, and all the games that I want to play can be played, but you need a supercomputer to play this. I mean, you're looking at 4 gigahertz plus to be able to run smooth frames per second on a well emulated game. And even then, sometimes you have to go into the options menu and play around to get rid of some of the glitches. It's both an amazing emulator and such a frustrating one, and that's why it gets just out of my top 5. Because I love this system, I love the PlayStation 2. There are so many games that are classics, and I will never forget them. But the issue is that this emulator does need some work still. I just wish the guys from Dolphin would jump on this emulator and get amongst it, because needing a 4 gigahertz processor, it's too much. It's too much for nowadays. It's a PlayStation 2, for God's sake. It's that damn emotion engine. Well, let's hope that emulation does go that little bit further, and somebody watches this video and actually steps in and says, hang on a minute, I know how to emulate PlayStation 2 even better than you have. So there you go, PPSXe. Number 5, and now I am starting to bring out the big guns. This is ePSXe, a PlayStation 1 emulator, and oh my god, is this a PlayStation 1 emulator. It goes far and beyond, and that's why it does make it into the top 5. The only reason it does not get any higher is because of its compatibility. The only thing that lets it down, I mean, this has been running since the year 2000. That's 15 years of evolution of this emulator. There has been breaks along the time, but it's been pretty actual progress that they've been making. And to be honest, it's mind-blowing the progress that they have made. You know, this is almost flawless, but again, it's the compatibility that lets it down. Don't get me wrong, there aren't that many games that it cannot play. You know, anything that you can think of, all the mainstream games, it will play flawlessly. In fact, that's the reason it's made it into the top 5, because it goes far and beyond. You see, this works on the plugins just like the PPSXe 2, which are unrelated by the way. And those plugins allow it to, I don't know, transform it into almost a modern game, because you can turn your resolution all the way up, you can do all kinds of shaders, you can do all kinds of, I don't know, messing around with the way the graphics are actually presented on the screen, to a result that you can actually transform the game so it's almost unrecognizable to its original form, and that is why it has made it into the top 5. Now, there are other emulators, like I said, which can play everything on the PlayStation. Zebra, or Xzebra, whatever you pronounce that name. That will emulate everything on the PlayStation. So that is a very good call for if you're going to go down this system's route. However, the one thing that ePSXe brings to the table is the graphics. It really is. I mean, if you are into changing your games from looking old and retro, which some people do like, to be honest, I myself do like that also, but certain games I love to soup up. I love to get HD. I love to get, 1080 all over it and transform the way it looks, the way it feels, and it really does bring it back to life, some of these games which have been forgotten. So that is why this emulator has made it into the top 5. All as I can say is hats off to these guys. Now, it has got its drawbacks, like the compatibility. You will need the plugins to actually make this achieve what I'm talking about. Again, I will give links down below to actually get these emulators, and setting them up, this one in particular, isn't that bad at all. It's just a case of configuring it the way you want it. Actually getting it running is no problem whatsoever. The issue that you will have is getting it the way that you like it, because there's so many options to tinker with. You'll be there for days just getting the way you want it. So have fun, guys, with this one. But that is my number 5, and a good number 5 it is too, if I don't say so myself. Number 4, the PPSSPP emulator. Jesus wept. It's one hell of a mouthful, but it's one hell of an emulator. Obviously, this emulates the PSP, and it is outstanding at the job of emulating this PSP. PSP games themselves are very good quality titles. I mean, they have one hell of a catalogue, bringing in one hell of a franchise as well, because it really took it to the next level. I mean, at the time when this was released, it was like the in-between stage of PlayStation 2 coming up to the PlayStation 3, and it was that in-between stage. It took even the PlayStation 2 quality games to the next level, and even now, by today's standards, these games, especially when played through this emulator, really do not age at all. I mean, the emulator itself, I mean, you could do high screen resolutions, anti-aliasing, image scaling, support for shaders, and linear atmospheric filtering. It really did bring the small screen to the big screen, excuse the pun. It really did make the little tiny screens from your PSP look awesome. I mean, I use this on a 55-inch 4K TV, and the graphics from what was the little tiny PSP screen look absolutely outstanding, especially for the big AAA titles. I mean, if you was to use another emulator, and there are quite a few emulators out there that actually emulate the PSP, if you were to use one that was next to it and you split screen it, you will notice a difference. You see, it's not so much with the actual overall games, it's the little things that are in there, the overall ambience of the game. It really does emulate it, but not just emulate it, it scales it to the larger screen without any hassle whatsoever. And also, the actual requirements to actually, get this working on your PC is barely minimum. You can have a very low-end PC and still get away with playing some very high-end games. Now, the other good thing about this emulator is if you're going to play it on your own, as in you don't incorporate it into a front end, it's actually got its own little menu screen. You can play around and add your games. Actually changing the settings within the games can be done quite easily without even entering into the main drop down bars that you have with other emulators. It really does take it to the next level. And also, you can even though it's a single player game, you can actually ad hoc Wi-Fi it, or in other words, you can link it up to another computer and actually play multiplayer. So you're not just stuck with a single player functionality that was on the PSP. You can actually take to the next level. Now, compatibility wise, there are just a couple of games that still need to be brought to this, but since the last 12 months or so, it's really taken it to the next level. I mean, when this was first released and it was in its infancy, it did have issues with some games. The Grand Theft Auto series in particular, I mean, that was one of the biggest titles that was on the PSP, because it actually brought new stories to the PSP. Because that's what it was, Liberty City stories and all that kind of good stuff. It really was outstanding with those games, but the problem was that they didn't work. But the good thing is that the guys who actually developed this are going on it on a daily basis, and there's so many evolutions that now there is barely any games whatsoever that are incompatible with this emulator. And the good thing about the PSP is there are so many awesome games for it, and that is what brings it to my number 4, because it is a well-deserving, very hard worked and an awesome system to be emulated to. Ticks all the boxes in all the right places. So thank you very much, PPSSPP guys. I wish you made your emulator with a smaller name, which was rolling off the tongue easier, but well done for all the work that you've put into it, and thank you very much. Okay then, next up is number 3, and this is the Dolphin emulator. Now this one speaks for itself and the reason why it got to number 3. I would rate it as number 1 or even number 2 to take the top slots, but the thing is that when you see what those slots are, then you will realise that yes, Dolphin emulator is out of this world, and what it can do is absolutely remarkable. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, back to the Dolphin. My god, what a little emulator this is. Basically, it can emulate Wii, GameCube, Triforce, WiiWare, the Wii channel stuff. There's all kinds of stuff this little bad boy can do. But the main thing it can do is not only emulate those systems, but it can enhance, which is something that other emulators struggle to even, well, play them, never mind enhance them. Now, Dolphin emulator used to be a very big system hog. Now, times have changed, to be honest. I mean, this was released, what, back in 2003? That's almost 12 years of evolution. And you used to need a supercomputer. Now, I mean a supercomputer to make this emulator run. But luckily, developers have got on board, and especially in the last 12 months or so, times really have changed. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're not going to get away with this on your little Acer notebook or something like that. It won't have no play whatsoever, especially on the more graphical titles. But this can play, yeah, I would say on a normal gaming rig. You know, you don't have to go any extreme or anything like that, especially with the Ishiruka fork that came out, because that really does take advantage of cache and all that kind of good stuff. Now, the kind of stuff which puts the emulator well above all the others isn't just the graphics, it's the usability of it. Now, this emulator emulates all those systems, but also you can use the actual controls from them systems. So with a little Bluetooth dongle, you can hook up the Wiimotes, which makes playing the Wii an absolute pleasure, to be honest. Same with the GameCube, you can hook up a GameCube controller and all that other good stuff that came with all these devices, no problem whatsoever. In terms of graphics and enhancing, like I talked about, it blows them up. I mean, even the Wii, the latest of these things that it actually emulates, the Wii was a standard definition console. When you played it, you could see the standard definition, and when you play the actual games on a Wii, on a large TV, you can notice the difference. You really can, especially when you blow this bad boy up to 4K resolution. That is a fact. You can blow this up to 4K resolution on your GameCube games, on your Wii games. There's actually hacks out there also that add HD textures to these. I mean, playing Mario Sunshine, an old GameCube game, blown up to 4K resolution on a 4K TV is absolutely out of this world. It plays no problem 60 frames per second on a half decent computer, to be honest. That's how groundbreaking things have gone with this emulator, and I cannot blow its trumpet enough. So to you guys over at Dolphin, thank you very much, because you really have taken this on board and you've unleashed the fury of the Dolphin. And that is why it is my number 3. Number 2, MAME. Oh my god, you cannot do an emulator series or an emulator charts without having MAME involved in it. It is probably, well, up until about a year ago, this would have been #1 in anybody's chart, without question. I mean, MAME has been developed since 1997. It originally was released on MS-DOS. That's how old it is. I mean, MS-DOS itself is now emulated. And how far these guys have come is unbelievable. I mean, don't get me wrong, the developers are in the hundreds. People from all around the world are involved in the MAME series. It is an unbelievable little bit of wonder to put in anybody's computer. And considering we've had, what, 18 years since, well, to the date of this video that it's been actually worked on, it has come on leaps and bounds. Now, recently, MAME and, for those of you who don't know, MES have been combined. Now, MES was a branch off of MAME, where MAME was basically the arcade side of it all, and MES was basically the consoles and retro computer side of it all. Both of them can emulate thousands, I mean tens of thousands of games, tens of thousands of consoles, boards, computers. It is absolutely outstanding how many games you can play on this. Now, MES and MAME, like I said, they've been now combined in the last few evolutions of it, and oh my god, is MES awesome. Now, recently, again, not only did the combination come with them both combining, but MES is now developed on a monthly basis. So roughly about, I think it's the last Tuesday of every month, a new version of MAME is released. And to be honest, I thought, well, why update? You know, you don't really need to update. But to be honest, in these last few months, so many new features have been brought into MAME. People from all over the world are really getting stuck into this. I mean, the last evolution alone, they brought in split screen multiplayer action. So for all those arcade games that you used to have to play and link up computers to play them, as in that's how you did it on your actual arcade cabinets, now you can actually split the screen into, I think it's up to 8 players, and actually game all together on one computer. Absolutely extraordinary. Now, the actual systems that it played itself was everything from, I don't know, the Pong stuff, all the way to basically the newer arcade stuff. So we are looking from, I don't know, 2006, I think the most recent thing is, and it dates all the way back to, like I said, the vector things like the Space Invaders, all that kind of good stuff, to be honest. Everybody knows what MAME is. I don't even know why I'm explaining this. But that is why it is at #2. Because the sheer number of games, the sheer number of compatibility, and the awesomeness it brings to my life. Because I love arcade games, and I love retro computers. So having all that in one package, well, you should have been #1. Well, here it is. Here is #1. The one emulator to rule them all, and by God does it rule them all. This is the best bit of kit I have seen since I ever started in this entire scene. I'm a poet and I didn't even know it also. Oh, RetroArch. RetroArch. What a beauty of a program this is. I don't even know if some people don't like me calling it emulators, but to me it is an emulator or a program. It's a thing that enables me to play other systems. So in my eyes, it's an emulator. It emulates various systems, and I know that this works on cores, whereas other systems, they work on plugins to do the sound, to do the CD emulation, to do the graphics, all that kind of good stuff. This runs cores, so instead of having a plugin per bit, it has kind of a plugin per system. So every system's got its own core that builds it up. And to be honest, it builds it up well, because the systems this emulates, it could cover probably all the systems that I've just mentioned, to be honest. There's not many systems that it doesn't do. I mean, the #2 slot there, MAME and MES, it's included in this emulator. I cannot believe how advanced this piece of kit is, and anybody that's not touched it yet, get amongst it, because this thing is evolving by the day. It really is. There's nightly builds, and those nightly builds are also awesome. They bring new things to it. I mean, the list of systems off the top of my head, we're looking at 3DO, we're looking at Atari, all the Atari stuff, Jaguars, Lynx, Atari 2600, 5200, 6800, whatever it is, Bandai WonderSwan, Nintendo DS, oh my god, awesome, Nintendo Game Boy, Nintendo Game Boy Advance, Nintendo Game Boy Color, Color Game Boy, Nintendo 64. That's why I didn't say Project 64 in this. I know everybody always put Project 64 in the top 10 emulators. The reason why it's not in there is because it's got more malware than emulator, and this emulates it far better. All you need to do is whack in a few new plugins. The SNES, NEC PSFX, TurboGrafx 16, Sony PlayStation, Sega 32X, it's endless. Sega CD, Sega Saturn. Oh, I could go on forever naming the systems that are coming or that are on this system. Also, on the horizon, they reckon they're going to bring in Dolphin. So my top 10 will probably dwindle to like top 1 emulator of all time, but in a few more years. But that is RetroArch. That is how good it is. And to be honest, it doesn't just emulate. It also brings an entire host of great features to these systems. First off, I know there are emulators that do these systems, you know, one-on-one, and in some cases it is good to actually use those. But what this does, it brings them all universally together, so I can set my controls to control all my systems identically. It's very smooth in the way it does that. Also, graphics. Some of these emulators, when you play them standalone, you cannot tweak, you cannot put shaders on there, you cannot put overlays on there, you cannot do the little things that I expect from modern day emulators. They can't be done, but RetroArch is all over that like a rash. I cannot blow its trumpet enough, and that is why RetroArch is number 1. That's why it's took number 1 spot, guys, and it's going to take one hell of a lot to knock it off that number 1 spot. So there you go. That is my top 10, and it has been an absolute pleasure to bring it to you. I can only say sorry for taking so long to actually bring this kind of stuff to you, and I hope that, if anything, you've been entertained and that you learn a little bit about the emulation of today and its pitfalls and its pleasures, of course. Now look forward, guys, because I have got a host of series of videos coming your way. I'm going to be taking a cab build from start to finish, as in actually sourcing the parts for what you may need of a computer to actually emulate everything that has been, well, made in the gaming industry, and taking it from start all the way to finish, so you've got a complete arcade cabinet. You can also, of course, use it in a HTPC, whatever you call it nowadays, basically a computer linked up to your TV, or you can just use it for everyday stuff in your bedroom, whatever you want. But basically it will be able to play anything. And of course, we're not going to be going for massive, I don't know, parts, because of course anybody can buy any expensive part and throw them in a machine. We're going to be looking at not budget build, but sensible parts for a machine that can do everything. And that's what it's all about nowadays. You know, not everybody's got a massive bank balance to go with a massive computer. So look forward to that. Also, at the moment, I've got a competition going on my Facebook page. I'm giving away 20 of the latest AAA titles, including the Metal Gear series, the Grand Theft Auto 5, God knows, there's too many to list, to be honest, but it's a very good one. I've also got a Steam group that's just been opened up, so make sure you join that, and you can actually join me in-game while I play all these games, well, and we can have a laugh doing it together, kind of thing. And, well, I'm not going to drag this out any longer, but make sure you join the Facebook, make sure you do all the stuff that people do on YouTube. Make sure at the very least that you like this video, please, guys. And if you want to get involved in the future and watch similar videos to this, make sure you subscribe, because that really does mean a lot to me, guys. It means a lot to see you in my list of subscribers. So thank you very much. Let me know what you thought about this video, if you've got any views, if you think I've missed anything out, or if you think I'm wrong about some stuff. You know, I'm only human myself, even though I am probably a intellectual god amongst men. Anyway, guys, you take care and you have a wonderful day. Laters.